Marriage at 30 is about building. You combine incomes, you buy a home together, you raise children, you accumulate assets side by side. The risks feel manageable because you have decades ahead to recover, adjust, and rebuild if something goes wrong. Marriage at 60 is about protecting. You're not building anymore, you're preserving. Every dollar you've saved, every asset you've structured, every routine you've built to keep your life stable, that's what's on the table. And remarriage after 60 doesn't just add a partner to your life. It restructures your entire financial, legal, and emotional architecture. This isn't a video about love. Love doesn't care about your tax bracket. Love doesn't read your estate plan. Love doesn't sit in a probate courtroom and argue over who gets the house. But marriage does all of that. And that's why remarriage after 60 is not primarily a romantic decision. It's a structural one. It changes how your money moves. It changes who makes decisions if you're incapacitated. It changes what your children inherit. It changes the legal identity you've spent years constructing. Most men don't think about it this way. They think about companionship, about not being alone, about having someone to travel with, to share dinners with, to wake up next to. And those things matter. I'm not dismissing them. But what I am telling you is this. The stakes of remarriage after 60 are fundamentally different from the stakes at any other point in your life. And the men who enter it without understanding those stakes are the ones who end up losing not just money, but the peace they spent years earning. Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 structural reasons why remarriage after 60 carries risks that most men dramatically underestimate. And number 5 is the one that should make you pause before signing anything. Welcome to Femme Psychology with Emma, where we examine the realities most people avoid because they're uncomfortable. If you value clarity over comfort, subscribe. This channel doesn't tell you what you want to hear. It tells you what you need to know. Let me set the stage before we get into the 5 reasons. When you're 60 or older, you're operating in a completely different financial and legal environment than you were at 30 or 40. Your assets are accumulated, your retirement accounts are structured, your estate plan, if you have one, reflects years of deliberate decisions about who gets what and when. Your adult children have expectations. Maybe they've already been factored into your will. Maybe they've helped you financially over the years and assume certain things will remain unchanged. Maybe they're estranged, and your estate plan reflects that distance. Your healthcare directives are in place. You've named someone for power of attorney. You've made decisions about end-of-life care. All of that is built on the assumption that your legal household is stable. Now imagine introducing a new spouse into that structure. Not a girlfriend, not a companion, a spouse. Because legally, a spouse outranks almost everything. Children, previous directives, beneficiary designations, power of attorney. In most states, a spouse automatically inherits unless you take extraordinary steps to override that. So remarriage after 60 isn't just about finding someone to share your life with. It's about handing someone legal authority over everything you've built. And that authority activates immediately the moment you sign the paper. Let me show you what that looks like in practice. The first reason is that financial entanglement happens the moment you remarry, not years later, not if things go wrong. Immediately. Here's what most men don't understand about marriage and money. When you marry, your assets don't stay yours. They become marital assets in most states. That means your retirement accounts, your investment portfolio, your home equity, all of it enters a shared legal category. Now, you can protect some of this with a prenuptial agreement, and I'll get to that later. But even with a prenup, there are layers of financial exposure that most men don't anticipate. Consider your Social Security. If you remarry before your full retirement age, your new spouse may be entitled to spousal benefits based on your earnings record. That's not a small thing. Depending on your income history, that could mean hundreds of dollars per month redirected to someone who contributed nothing to your lifetime earnings. Or consider your pension. If you have a defined benefit pension from a previous career, remarriage can trigger survivor benefits for a new spouse. That means if you pass away, she receives a portion of your pension for the rest of her life. And that obligation survives divorce in many cases. Let me give you a realistic scenario. You're 63. You've got a pension of $4,000 a month. You've saved $800,000 in retirement accounts. You own your home outright. You've got a will that leaves everything to your 2 adult sons. You meet someone. You fall in love. You remarry. 8 months later, things sour. She files for divorce. Now she's entitled to a portion of your pension. She can claim spousal support. Depending on your state, she may have a claim to a share of your retirement accounts accumulated during the marriage, even if those accounts were funded entirely by your pre-marriage savings. Your sons watch their inheritance shrink, not because you made bad investments, not because the market crashed, but because you signed a marriage certificate without understanding what it legally triggered. That's not paranoia, that's family law. And at 60, you don't have time to recover from financial entanglement the way you would at 40. The math simply doesn't work. The second reason is one that almost nobody talks about, and it's the one that causes the most long-term damage: your adult children. When you remarry after 60, you're not just changing your household, you're changing your family's entire emotional and financial landscape. And your children, whether they're 30 or 50, will feel it. Here's the dynamic. Your kids have spent years adjusting to your divorce, your retirement, your new life as a single man. They've made peace with it. Some have even benefited from it. Maybe you're more available, more present, more financially generous now that you're not supporting a household. Then you remarry. And suddenly, there's a new person in the picture, a new dynamic, new expectations. And the inheritance question looms over everything. Let me be direct. Your children are watching. They're watching to see if this new woman will be taken care of after you're gone. They're watching to see if their share of the estate will be reduced. They're watching to see if you're being taken advantage of. Even if none of that is true, the perception creates tension. I've seen men lose relationships with their adult children over remarriage, not because the children are selfish, but because the remarriage felt like a betrayal of the family they thought they knew. Here's a scenario that plays out more often than you'd think. Your daughter helped you through your divorce. She drove you to appointments. She sat with you during the hard nights. She was your person, and now there's a new woman in that role. You don't mean to replace her. But that's exactly how it feels from her side. And when the legal questions start, when the will needs to be rewritten, when the beneficiary designations shift, the emotional damage compounds. Your kids start asking questions, not out of greed, out of fear. Fear that you're being manipulated. Fear that decades of their father's hard work are about to be redirected to someone who wasn't there for any of it. That fear doesn't go away with a conversation. It festers. And it poisons the relationship you had with your children long before any legal dispute ever happens. Remarriage after 60 doesn't just add a spouse, it subtracts from your legacy. And for many men, that legacy, what they leave behind for their children, is the single most important thing they'll ever build. The third reason is the one that keeps estate attorneys up at night, and it's the one most men never consider until it's too late. Marriage changes who has legal authority over your life. Think about what happens if you're hospitalized, if you're incapacitated, if you can't speak for yourself. Right now, you've probably named someone, a son, a daughter, a trusted friend, as your healthcare proxy. You've signed a power of attorney. You've made your wishes known. That person walks into the hospital and makes decisions on your behalf. The moment you remarry, in most states, your new spouse automatically becomes your healthcare proxy. Your power of attorney is overridden. Your adult children who you trusted with your care are locked out of the room. And your spouse doesn't even have to want the role. It's automatic, legal, immediate. Now, you can fight this in court. You can draft documents trying to override the spousal default, but the legal battle alone can drain your estate. And while you're fighting, your new spouse has full authority to make medical decisions, including end-of-life decisions, without consulting your children. Let me paint the picture. You're 70. You've had a stroke. You're in the ICU. Your daughter arrives at the hospital, frantic, wanting to see you, wanting to be involved. She's told she can't come in. Your wife, your new wife of 2 years, has signed the admission papers. She's the legal next of kin. She decides who visits. She decides what information is shared. She decides whether to pursue aggressive treatment or comfort care. Your daughter stands in the hallway, helpless, not because your wife is cruel, but because the law gave her that power the moment you exchanged vows. And here's the part that should really concern you. If that marriage is rocky, if there's tension, if there's resentment, that legal authority becomes a weapon, not necessarily a conscious one. But the power is there. And power in the wrong hands during a medical crisis is devastating. This isn't about distrusting your partner. It's about understanding that marriage after 60 transfers control in ways that marriage at 30 never does. At 30, you have time to correct course. At 70, you might not have days. The fourth reason is quieter than the others, but for many men, it's the most personal. Remarriage after 60 disrupts the stability you spent years building. And I don't mean financial stability. I mean the deeper kind. The kind where you wake up and you know your day, where your routines are yours, where your home reflects your life, not a compromise between two people negotiating space, habits, and preferences. After a divorce, especially a late-in-life divorce, most men go through a rebuilding process. It's not glamorous, it's not romantic, it's just reconstruction. You figure out who you are outside of a partnership. You relearn how to live alone without feeling lonely. You build rituals that ground you. Maybe you fish on Saturday mornings. Maybe you read for an hour before bed. Maybe you've structured your week so that Tuesdays are for errands, Thursdays are for the gym, and Sundays are for doing absolutely nothing. That structure isn't just routine. It's identity. It's the architecture of your peace. And remarriage dismantles that architecture, not because your new wife is difficult, but because two lives merging always creates friction. Her schedule conflicts with yours. Her preferences override yours. Her needs compete with yours. You compromise, and compromise feels fine at first. But over months, those small compromises accumulate. Your Saturday mornings aren't yours anymore. Your quiet evenings have background noise. Your kitchen has someone else's food in the fridge. And slowly, so slowly, you don't notice. You start losing the person you rebuilt. Here's what that looks like. You remarry at 62. By 64, you realize you haven't been fishing in months. Not because you don't want to, but because she doesn't understand why you need that time alone. So you stopped going. You stopped reading before bed because she wants to talk. You stopped going to the gym on Thursdays because she has plans. You stopped doing nothing on Sundays because she expects you to be present. And one morning, you wake up and you don't recognize your own week. That's not a failed marriage. That's a successful one by most people's definition. You're together. You're compatible. You're doing fine. But you're not you. And the man who spent 5 years rebuilding himself after divorce just got erased, not by conflict, but by compatibility. That's the quiet cost of remarriage after 60. And it's the one nobody warns you about because it doesn't sound like a risk. It sounds like love. Now we come to number 5, and this is the one that should make every man over 60 sit down and think carefully before signing anything. You cannot afford a second major financial reset. At 30, if your marriage fails, you lose some money. Maybe the house, maybe savings. But you have 20 or 30 years of earning ahead of you. You can rebuild, you can start over. The math is on your side. At 60, the math is not on your side. If your remarriage fails, and statistically, remarriages after 60 have a higher divorce rate than first marriages at any age, you're not looking at a setback. You're looking at a catastrophe. Here's why. Your earning years are essentially over. Social Security is your primary income. Maybe a pension, maybe some investment withdrawals. That's it. There's no salary coming in. There's no bonus. There's no side hustle that replaces a 6-figure income. So when a divorce after 60 splits your assets, you're not splitting income, you're splitting principal. You're eating into the base that generates everything. And once that base is reduced, it doesn't grow back. Let me give you the numbers, because numbers don't lie. Say you have $600,000 in retirement savings. You remarry. The marriage lasts 4 years. During that time, you share expenses, you support a household, you make financial decisions as a couple. Then it ends. Depending on your state, she could be entitled to half of everything accumulated during the marriage. That could mean $200,000 or more gone, not spent, transferred, legally, automatically. $200,000 at a 4% withdrawal rate is $5,000 a year in lost retirement income. Every year. for the rest of your life, and that's if the split is clean. If there's alimony, and in some states, a lower-earning spouse can claim spousal support even at 65, the number goes higher. You're not just losing money. You're losing time. Because at 65, you don't have time to earn it back. You don't have the decades that a 30-year-old has to recover. You have maybe 15 to 20 years of life left. And every dollar lost now is a dollar that won't be there when you need it most, when your health declines, when your care costs rise, when you need that money to maintain dignity. This is what I mean when I say, at 60, mistakes cost more structurally than emotionally. It's not that love doesn't matter. It's that love, when it fails at this stage, takes something from you that you literally cannot replace. Your time, your principle, your security. And once it's gone, no amount of regret brings it back. I want to be very clear about something before I close. I'm not telling you never to remarry. I'm not telling you that love after 60 is a mistake. I'm not telling you that companionship isn't worth the risk. What I am telling you is this: companionship is emotional. Marriage is structural. And most men confuse the two. They feel lonely, so they pursue marriage. They want closeness, so they sign papers. They mistake the emotional need for connection with the legal reality of commitment. And those are two very different things. If you want companionship after 60, there are ways to get it without the legal entanglement. Cohabitation agreements, separate finances, clear legal structures, prenuptial agreements that actually protect what you've built. But if you're going to remarry, truly remarry, with full legal commitment, you need to do it with your eyes open. You need a lawyer, not just a feeling. You need a financial advisor, not just a heart. You need to understand exactly what you're signing away before you sign it. Because at this stage of life, you're not protecting a future. You're protecting a legacy, and legacies don't recover from bad decisions. Companionship can be beautiful. But legal commitment after 60 requires a different level of scrutiny than anything you faced at 30. Treat it that way, and you'll be fine. If this hit home, comment below. Do you believe marriage after 60 is an emotional decision or a structural one? I read every response. Subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma for the kind of clarity most channels won't give you. Tell me where you're watching from. This community matters. Goodbye.